Today I'm going to do a book review. It's a book written by Trevor Noah, and the title is called Born a Crime and Other Stories. Here it is. This is the paperback. It's a book that my wife has been recommending for me to read for a while now, but I wasn't interested because I couldn't understand why there's such a fuss over this young South African comedian. Because in my own opinion, there are other, other comedians who are more noteworthy, like let's say the late Richard Pryor. And so, if there was a book on Richard Pryor's life, then yes, I would have looked forward to reading that. But eventually, I decided to succumb to my wife's wisdom and read the book. And it really is a compelling tale. And now I'm beginning to understand not only the buzz behind the book, but behind the man as well. There's been some chatter over social media that the book is going to be made into a movie by Lupita Nyong'o, who has acquired the rights to the book, and she's also going to play Trevor Noah's mom in the movie. And reading the book, I now understand why there's been a lot of interest in the young man, and why the man is uniquely suited to talk about race, race in America, race relations, race in society, things like that. Because when he first was made the host of the Today Show, I believe it's called the Today Show, I think. Anyway, I don't really watch it. My brother's been watching it for close to a decade now, but he wasn't the host at the time. And my wife currently watches episodes when she can, and she listens to the podcast. So, for those of you who have premium, you can see it on DST, on Comedy Central. Yes, Comedy Central. So, when he became the host of the show, I wondered if there were no African American comedians who were better suited to do the job. But after reading this book, I can see that he has a unique experience, and so can understand these things in a more nuanced point of view. Because racism in America is black and white, but apartheid in South Africa, which is also racism, was, let me say, black, white, and grey. So you had the white settlers, then you had the black natives, and you also had another race of people who were called the coloreds. That's in the apartheid experience. Now the coloreds are the mulattoes, the half castes, the Japanese, the Asians, the Chinese, those sorts of people who didn't quite fall into the straight black or straight white category. But the apartheid state had to deal with ways to put everybody in their own place, because the whole system was built upon making sure that everybody was segregated, not just in the legal sense, but also in a very physical sense as well. So you'd have the whites living in one side, the coloreds living in another side, and then the blacks living in another side as well. So since he grew up in South Africa under a time of apartheid, although it looks like by the time he was finishing the early years of his school, apartheid was on the way out and Mandela was going to be freed, but still, I was able to witness a country in transition, in dealing with these things, the color of one's skin or the language that you speak and things like that. And so now, from reading the book, the young man has earned my respect, and I now see why he's uniquely suited to host the show, especially when the show serves its own purpose in talking about race relations in America. And it's also a very compelling story because it's not just a story of a young man, but it's a story of a young man and his mother as they walk through life together. And so, because of that, it's a universal story that a lot of us would be able to appreciate. But I think the masterstroke, or the most brilliant part of the book, excuse me, was that they avoided the whole thing of writing an autobiography. Now, when you're a young man, you're newly new on the scene, and perhaps it's still questionable what your legacy is going to be. I mean, you don't really have a legacy because you're young. Take Obama, for instance. Before he ran for president, he had written two autobiographies, I can't remember the titles. Something about hope. I can't remember the titles anyway. But when you're in that situation, like a young Barack Obama or a young Trevor Noah, and your true legacy is yet to be seen, writing an autobiography is kind of pretentious. So I think the master stroke that that Trevor Noah has had was, this book is not an autobiography. In fact, if you want to read the book because you're interested in finding out how he became an accomplished TV show host and a comedian, then you're not going to like the book, because the book doesn't delve into any of that. So this isn't even an autobiography per se, but it's a collection of some stories from his youth that highlight different things about family, about multiculturalism, and about living under a racist state. So I think that was the masterstroke of the book. So he can write the story because he's not writing an autobiography. And so while those of us who love stand-up comedy will be watching his career and see what kind of progression he makes and what kind of legacy he leaves behind, while he's gaining the life experience that is going to lead up to the autobiography, we can still enjoy this book because it is one man's unique perspective about growing up in a racist state where he was neither black nor white, and since he was never really accepted into the amongst the coloreds, which is where which is what his racial category was supposed to be. So because of that, I think this book is an interesting read. Once again, it's Trevor Noah, Born a Crime and Other Stories. This is it again. But for those of you who are curious about the title, why Born a Crime, it's because at the time that he was born in South Africa, it was a crime for people to have sexual relations. For people to have sexual relations, and of course, his mother, by the very act of being involved with a white expatriate, both of them had committed a crime, and so in effect he was born a crime. And then again, for those of you who are used to Trevor Noah on TV now with the slick and polished image, it will be an interesting read, because you see that not only was he born a crime, but because of the economic realities that the economic and cultural realities that he was born into, eventually he did adopt a life of crime, but not in the sense that you would think of, because he starts off, one of his early business ventures is pirating CDs, which a lot of us know to be crimes. But when you're born in an impoverished black community with little ways to make a living, it doesn't seem like that much of a big deal to just pirate one CD and then sell it for a few pennies. That doesn't seem like so much of a crime, because you're just trying to make a living. So he also gives us some slightly nuanced views about how people get involved in crime, what crime is, and things like that. Okay, let me not talk too much about the book. Let me leave something for you guys to read. But by and large, it's a compelling read. If you can read the book, go ahead and have a read.